Let's jump right in. It's my favorite time. It's Summer League overreaction time. At the time of recording this, as we said, we have 1.5 days of NBA Summer League down in the record books. We saw all the teams that are playing this California Classic once already. And the Hornets are in the middle of blowing out China right now, and the Spurs are going to play later tonight. But other than that, we've seen pretty much everybody twice. There's certainly some superstar performances that have come out. There are some guys you would hope are superstars that don't look so good. And then, yes, of course, there's Bronny James, who got a DNP tonight. That's fascinating. We don't have to do like list form winners and losers right now, but I just want like bullet point style. What are some of your reactions or overreactions to the first day and a half of NBA Summer League?
Kel'el Ware is legit. Like the high expectations, or the people who had high expectations and high hopes for his upside, I think his performance these first two games have only fueled that. And I know offensively the first game wasn't superb, but 5 blocks and then go into what he did on Sunday was spectacular. Like, I think if you're the Heat, you feel really good about his ability to fill the role you drafted him for, right? That Derek Lively kind of just super athletic rim protector, lob catcher, do a little bit of everything around the basket. He looks to be able to fill that role at a pretty high level fairly quickly, which is a big win for Miami. And to me, I know Stephon Castle's like stat line wasn't great, but you watch him and you're like, yeah, okay, you plug him into the Spurs next to Wemby and you got yourself somebody, which again, we expected, wasn't necessarily a surprise. And going from a summer league to regular season is a different challenge altogether, but we didn't see, I thought, any real weakness that we didn't expect in his game. It was a solid performance, made me even more confident that he's going to be a permanent starter for the Spurs before the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Those are the two loudest, like, positive names, I would say.
Yes.
There are also, like, with all Summer League versions of Summer League, there are, like, very loud positives for guys who just don't matter. And, like, with all due respect to names I'm not even going to name, so I don't want to disrespect anybody, like, there are guys that I'm not even going to mention that have played well through a game and a half. To me,
Adonis Arms.
Yeah, like Adonis, we love Adonis Arms, right?
It was great.
He's not going to like break out and be an NBA starter because he had a couple like big games in Summer League. It's the rookies who matter. It's like the first round rookie picks that matter. And then it's guys who, like, I don't know, for whatever reason, like maybe they haven't played much as a rookie and now they're stepping into year 2 and they send them back to Summer League. Like there's a lot of pedigree talent types you're trying to keep an eye on. And I think of the entire list you could make of everybody at this California Classic event, Stephon Castle and Kel'el Ware would be like the two everybody agrees have wowed thus far. Yeah. And Stephon Castle's box score isn't going to blow anybody away. But the most important thing to me in that first Spurs game, again, caveat, asterisk here, we are recording this before the second Spurs game. So maybe everything we're about to say or have said can be thrown out the window depending on what Castle looks like tonight.
Yeah.
But in game 1, I was fascinated. I felt like they were actually letting him do a lot of point guardy things. And I talked about it in our preview of like, well, this roster doesn't look like they're even entertaining point guard. There's 9 other guards on it. But in the game, like they were letting him bring the ball up. I think they essentially started him at point guard. He was dribbling into like off the dribble threes that looked super smooth. The jumper looks legit. So look, he was the number 1 player on my big board. You know this. It was a great sign for me, but I'm kind of like, I'm buying his perception of himself that maybe he's actually an NBA point guard.
I think there's that possibility. I think this is also the chance for you to try it out.
Yeah.
And feel it out. Worst case scenario, you can tell him, like, we tried it. We're going to put you at the 2 because we have, Trey Jones or whoever they end up sliding in there. And then we'll get you some minutes there. And you kind of gradually erode it back to wherever. But this is the chance to do it. And he took full advantage of it. There'll be highs and lows, I'm sure, but there's much more, I think, validity to his demands than there was when I first heard it.
Yeah, when you heard it in the summer, we said it at the time. It was like, why is this consummate, great teammate, leader, unselfish guy now like playing the selfish card? Because in my opinion, that was one of the biggest things Castle had going for him. Like, obviously, he's a lockdown defender. There's promising offensive stuff. But, like, one of the big upsells of Stephon Castle being a top 5 pick in this draft was, like, he's the most unselfish teammate there is. And that was all thrown out the window in the pre-draft process, which to me was, like, a really interesting move by Castle and his camp. Why would you want that perception, even if you really feel strongly that's what you should be? But, like, I don't know. I kind of just shrugged it off and laughed at it the entire time. Like, he's not a point guard. What are they doing? This is stupid, but he's good enough. We're going to get through it. And then I saw him play one game and did the me overreaction thing. He looks like a point guard, dude. Like, and they didn't use him like that at UConn at all. And I understand why they didn't, because Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer are awesome. But it made me start literally having flashes in my head of specific plays at UConn where, like, they would use him as like a short roller or like a high post guy, and he would just catch and make the perfect instant read and throw it up to Klingon or hit Caravan in the corner. And it wasn't a point guard play, but it was like all the skills you need to be that. And it's like the lights went off and just clicked of like, wait a second, we're seeing it now because he gets to do it. And I almost wonder what it would have looked like. Like, obviously, it's great he went to UConn. What if he was on a team where he just played point guard in college? We might view him completely differently.
We may. And I have to take a step back. I forgot something. I'm sitting here talking about Trey Jones, whoever they slide into that spot. It's Chris Paul.
Chris Paul. Yeah.
It's Chris Paul who is going to be that spot. So if you are the Spurs, I think there is no risk in doing this now. Because even if he does well, like, you have Chris Paul, but he does well, kind of to your point, you now have this down the road where you're like, okay, like this is a real thing. Yeah. You can start him at the 2 next to Chris Paul, and then you can give him some minutes when Chris Paul's on the bench, because Chris Paul's not going to play 35 minutes a night at his age right now. You know what I mean?
He's not.
He's not
playing 82 games.
And he can learn from Chris Paul. Chris Paul can, teach him and learn from that. So by year 2, year 3, maybe he is a full-fledged, fully flushed out lead guard in the NBA. Like, this is now, I think, a much more, at least in my mind, a much more realistic scenario than it was a week ago before I got sunburned.
Yeah, and it seems like the Spurs are entertaining it too, which is good. The other guy you mentioned, Kel'el Ware, I think he to me is the biggest winner of the first 2 days of Summer League. Like, and now we've gone through it with Kel'el of covering him in the Big Ten in Indiana. Like, I can say this honestly. I think Carter and I have long been Kel'el Ware believers. Like, we've always loved the talent. We liked him when he was coming to Indiana. I think, like, we got caught up in the summer last year of like doubting the way the roster was coming together, but not necessarily doubting Kel'el himself. And I mean, we advocated for him to be like a late lottery pick. Like, I don't think it was crazy. He went 15th. Now, Cart and I did have skepticism towards like, what's it look like in Miami? Because he's not a heat culture guy to me. Now heat culture can really rub itself off on you and change you and make you better. Hopefully that happens. But from the first 2 days of Summer League, none of that shit matters. This dude's just been the most talented player on the floor. Like, he's the only guy, Stephon Castle included, with all due respect, he's the only guy I've seen in the California Classic that looks like an NBA starter right now. And it's like a man amongst boys.
This was the hope, is that, Kel'el Ware's athleticism and his overall skill set is built to thrive in the more wide open NBA game. And for as good as he was in Indiana, as productive as he was, you were hoping that there was maybe even another level that could be unlocked, playing that more open style that allowed him to use his athleticism, run a little bit more, do some more of the things that make him special. That was the pitch when he struggled at Oregon, and then was in the transfer portal. It was like, well, he needs a different scenario where he's going to play differently. And for all of the problems Indiana's roster did have last season, I did think Mike Woodson put him in spots that made him successful. And now going to the system with Miami, and yes, you have concerns about how Kel'el Ware and Bam Adebayo, who he put on his own Mount Rushmore of best players in NBA history, Kel'el Ware did. I don't know if you saw that. That was interesting.
That's Khalil. Like
Yeah.
and people are like, is he joking? Is that a bit? Like, no, I think that's what Khalil's brain actually believes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
And I don't know how that pairing will work, but in this setting with the NBA game, like I think you were seeing best case scenario for Kel'el Ware pan out, where he is dominant. His athleticism makes an even bigger impact than it did in college. Not to mention, before you even get into the skill part, just his physical tools, and that's really really encouraging if you're a Miami Heat fan.
it's huge. Yeah. Just to run through numbers, not that summer league numbers are everything, but through 2 games, he's averaging 19 points, 8.5 rebounds, 3 blocks a game. Yesterday in the second game for the Heat, he had 26 points, 11 rebounds, 3 assists, and a block. He was 12 for 21 from the floor. He's taking 21 shots in a game. Like, this dude's kind of acting like a superstar at summer league because he looks like one. The Indiana stuff. This is my last point on Ware, and I'm keeping my eye on this as we enter college basketball season because I don't want to go out on a limb and defend Mike Woodson. I don't like. I think there are very real flaws to him as a college basketball coach today. I also think he crushed this offseason. Like he
Yep.
would be on my very short list of the best people in college basketball this offseason based on the actions he took to help Indiana basketball. To me, I don't think he's a bad coach. I don't think you coach as long as you do in the NBA. And look, they won 19 games last year. For as bad as everybody wants to say, like they weren't a losing team. They were 19 and 14 on a team that had no guards at all. It's his fault that they didn't have the guards. Roster building's been his problem. When he's built a good roster, I don't think he's had issues. Like Jalen Hood Schifino and Trace Jackson Davis swept Zach E. So we can't sit here and say the guy can't coach. It's more about can he stay out of his own way. With that said, I struggle because I have defended Woodson's player development a lot in the last couple years, and I point to the 2 names I just said. Look at Trace Jackson Davis at the end of his career when Woodson had him for like a couple years versus what he came in as. And he was always good as a freshman, but that senior year, TJD was like second best player in the country, far and away, a new level we hadn't seen. Hood Schifino was only there a year, but from who he walked in the door as in November to what he left as a first round pick in March, the final month of that season, he was playing lights out. He was the best player on the floor in those games against Purdue. And I think you got to give Woodson some credit for it. And I viewed Ware as that as well. When he came from Oregon to Indiana, everyone was like, well, no coach can get him to play hard. Mike Woodson got him to play hard. And it didn't lead to Indiana being great, but it led to Ware being the 15th pick in the draft. And I'm now sitting here like watching what's happening in Summer League, simultaneously believing like, oh, Mike Woodson did a great job getting him to this point, while also sitting here being like, wait a second. Why didn't he look like this at all in college? Is it because he was playing next to a center the entire time he was on the court? Like, oh, wait a second. Kel'el Ware looks like a superstar when he's surrounded by shooting? We didn't see that once last year. So, like, it's such a weird dichotomy of like, did Woodson fail him or did Woodson get him here?
I at risk of turning this into a Mike Woodson rant, I was a Hawks fan during the Mike Woodson era with Atlanta. I grew up a Hornets fan. I was never a Bobcats fan, and then became a Hornets fan once the Hornets came back to Charlotte. So, like, I had a fan drifter era, and I loved that Hawks team.
Was it Mike Bibby?
No, it was ISO Joe and Josh Smith.
Okay, all right,
yeah. You could make the argument that like Mike Woodson helped them become a consistent like top 4, top 5 seed in the East. You could also make the argument that he kept them from reaching their full potential. When he got to the Knicks, then after that, this was the Carmelo Anthony Knicks, the ones who were supposed to like be up there and potentially knock off the Heat and the Heatles. They were 2 seed in the East. They were great, but couldn't get past Indiana for 2 seasons. And then I think he lasted like 21 games or so the next season and got fired because they were like 5-16 or something just ridiculous, where he was fine, but didn't elevate what was around him. Like I think this year is really big for Mike Woodson because it was easy to blame the roster last year. This year he's got the roster, so this year is going to be about his X's and O's. But to your point, I will say I do think he's done a great job of developing bigs throughout his career, NBA and the stint in Indiana. He's done a great job developing bigs. Where is a big piece of that, considering what we saw from him at Oregon and we saw from him at Indiana. And yes, what he's doing now is incredible. What we've seen. It's also summer league. It's also a style that more fits his strengths. But to your point, yes, put some damn shooting around him, and then you have an All-American at Indiana. Like that's it. We were all screaming it all last offseason. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out, and now we're seeing it come to fruition. It's the dichotomy of what makes Mike Woodson, I think, something of a major talking point in college basketball, is because there are legitimate cases for both good and bad things that he does.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to the same as you. We've spent way too much time on Mike Woodson right now. This season's going to be really interesting. I've literally watched the highlights, and I watched one full game of Kel'el Ware right now with the Heat, and it's like that's not the dude I watched at Indiana. And some of the skill set stuff is still there, like the shot blocking is there, the scoring, but he has so much more room to operate. And it's not just that there's a bigger area around the paint in the NBA. It's that like people aren't triple teaming him because there isn't another big right next to him the way Malik Renew was. I don't know. It's just he was almost so good at Indiana and no one realized. So he was doing it in spite of the players around him. So I don't know. Miami got a great one, it looks like. Let's do some quick negative reactions or overreactions. The loudest negative for me would be the two Los Angeles Lakers stars, if we're being honest. In game one, both Dalton Knecht and Bronny James really struggled. The Lakers got smacked. In game two, Bronny didn't play. A swollen left knee is what it has been called. Dalton Knecht once again struggled with his shot. I'm trying to pull up the exact numbers. ESPN's app doesn't have game one readily available right now, but Knecht was 3 for 13 in game two with 12 points, and that seems like a better box from what I saw than game one. The tape is really scary to me on Dalton here. He can't create separation at all.
No, game one he was 3 of 12. It is interesting, these struggles, because he went through it a little bit in December in college, where he had that awesome first month and took a step back, and I was kind of like, okay, well, this fun Northern Colorado guy is over, and then he bounced back up and was the best player not named Zach Edey in the country for the rest of the season. I still think that's there, but I do think, kind of to your point, the lack of athleticism really shows itself. Like, he is a tall wing who could just shoot over guys in the college level. And now that everybody else has more size like him, he can't just do that. He is skilled enough to adjust his game, and Summer League is made for adjustments. But he's going to have to adjust his game. He can't do it the same way. He's not just going to get to the foul line extended and elevate over people. That's not in the cards for the NBA.
Yeah. The thing that scares me here, and I normally am a throw age out the window guy, but guys I would expect to quote unquote struggle in summer league and find their way and adjust would be like Trae Young, who comes into summer league as a 5'10" guy who's 19 years old, and he's gonna have to learn. I'm trying to think of other good, like even Lonzo was young. Lonzo was good in summer league, but like those guys who spent 3 months in college are practically still high schoolers, but are such ahead of the game savant type scorers that's who you get. Knecht was supposed to be a finished product. Knecht is what, 23 right now?
Yep.
And like he fell in the draft for who knows what reason. Everyone, and including us, said the Lakers are huge winners on draft night. You have to expect that on a pseudo all-star game of sorts, this is basically just a bunch of like college role player types that are here. Knecht is supposed to bust those dudes' asses. And when we did like the pre-summer league, who do we expect to be superstars conversation? Dalton Knecht is 1A. He's supposed to be the most NBA ready guy of anyone. Like he is supposed to be closer to what he will be in the NBA now than any other player in this draft class. And like you go back, man, if you watch the clips of his struggles in these games, it's like he just isn't open ever when he's putting it on the deck. He's not there's no burst, he's not getting to the rim, he's not getting any inches of separation, and if he's going to shoot off of the dribble, it becomes a much tougher fadeaway. And he can hit those. He did it in college, but it just felt like there was a burst in college that isn't there in summer league right now. And look, it's been 2 games, but I would be super concerned, like super concerned. And the very few times he is getting open shots, I mean, he's making them. Like he's still going to be a high IQ guy who stands in the corner and doesn't miss a wide open three. But I think the sell on him was like, could he be Austin Reeves but better? I'm not seeing that at all based on 2 games.
No, and no, to be fair, we didn't see it with Austin Reeves either.
For a while, yeah.
But Knecht, I do think there is something to the athletic limitations, and you can't just rise up over guys anymore. There's got to be a little bit more to it. I think he'll figure it out. I think he is too good of a scorer and wired to score in a way where he will figure it out. But he's got to change some things. He's got to change some things. He can't just be the 6'6" guy who is something few college teams have.
Yeah.
Every NBA team has multiple 6'5" to 6'8" wings who probably have a longer wingspan than you, who can probably move a little faster than you. And you got to figure some things out there.
Yeah, and we said it too. He's not going to defend ever. So like if offensive stuff isn't there at that point, like you're trying to be a 3-and-D guy with no defense. How long can you last with that? The last big negative, if we can even call it a big negative at this point, Bronny was very underwhelming. I don't think that's a surprise. I don't think you or I would sit here and be like, we're shocked by that. But he was 2 for 9 from the floor, 0 for 3 from 3, 0 for 2 from free throw, 4 points, minus 15 in 22 minutes in the first game. And then, yeah, game 2, he sat out with knee soreness. That's what it's called. Is he sitting out with knee soreness, Brian? Is that what's happening right now? Or are we already shutting the kid down because he's clearly not ready for this level?
Either way, it doesn't matter. It's not like it's impacting what the Lakers are going to do with him. They're going to have him on the court and in the rotation at some point this year so he can play with his dad because he wants to keep LeBron happy, which is totally fine. You get all that. The thing that gets me is watching the broadcast. He's clearly struggling to shoot. Can't make a free throw. Can't make a three. But they keep bringing up the fact he was like 19 or 25, whatever he was in the 3-point contest at the combine, which was among the leaders, blah, blah, blah. If you watch him like actually do that drill, because that was made the rounds when he actually did it, it's like walking through this thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's like it's not correlate. It doesn't correlate. But when you watch these games, they're gonna grab at everything they can, obviously, for Bronny. And I kind of feel for him somewhat because there's part of him that didn't ask for all this attention. He just kind of has to deal with it because he's LeBron's kid. And that part does stink, but like, we got to stop trying to make him out to be something that he's not. He's not an NBA player. He's going to get chances to because of what his dad wants and who he is. And honestly, I think that the player Bronny can become is an NBA level player and be a good rotation player at some point. But he had a heart attack a year ago. He did not have a good season at USC. Like, it's going to take some time. We can't rush it just because it's a cool story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, not ready at all. That's all this is. And I wonder how much, if at all, we're going to see him again in Summer League. But also it's like, if there's a guy who should be playing Summer League, shouldn't be Bronny. Like that's kind of, I was bummed today when it's like, okay, he's out with knee. Like, okay, all right, are we load managing the kid at the 55th pick? That I don't follow. I don't follow what we're doing here. Does he just automatically get to be in the rotation? Maybe, I guess. I don't know. I was sad because I think he can play better than he did in the first game. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I don't think he's good, but I think he was clearly like spooked, and it's just a big moment, and he didn't play well. I'd love to see the ball back in his hands and see if he can play well. So
I would expect to see him in Vegas for the spectacle of it, but you may get some tightness and soreness days in there as well.
Yeah, maybe a DNP on a flight to Paris to watch Dad. That could be a thing too. All right, there you go. I love Summer League so much, man. We're probably gonna do this daily. I'm not gonna lie to you.